Have you ever heard the last wish of a dying person? What if that wish wasn't ordinary, but challenged the thinking of an entire village? Could you keep a promise if it meant everyone would be upset with you? Think about it. What if your grandfather, before dying, handed you a letter and told you to read it in front of everyone? Even if it meant you would be left alone afterward, would you have the courage? What if that letter contained a truth that everyone already knew, but no one was willing to accept? Does the one who speaks the truth really become the wrong one? Or are people simply afraid of hearing the truth? And if the whole village turns against you, will you still keep your promise, or will you choose silence? This is the story of a dying grandfather's final wish, and of a grandson who had to decide: save relationships or stand with the truth? Watch till the end, because perhaps in this story, you might see your own reflection. Have you ever heard the last words of a dying person? What if those words could change an entire life? And what if that promise could shake the thinking of a whole village? There was a strange silence in the room. The ticking of the clock hanging on the wall was clearly audible. Grandfather lay on the bed. His breathing was heavy. His eyes were half closed. His grandson sat beside him, holding his hand tightly. "Grandpa, you're going to be okay, right?" His voice trembled. Grandfather smiled faintly. "My child, everyone has to leave this world one day. But before I go, there's one task left." The grandson leaned closer. "Just tell me what to do." Grandfather took a difficult breath. "Promise me, whatever I say, you will do it. Even if people get angry, even if you're left alone." A wave of fear passed through the grandson's heart. "I promise." Grandfather pulled out an old envelope from beneath the bed. The envelope had turned yellow with age. "Tomorrow, at my grave, after the prayer, read this letter in front of everyone." The grandson was startled. "What's in it?" A strange spark appeared in grandfather's eyes. The truth. The truth that everyone knows, but refuses to accept. The air in the room grew heavier. The grandson asked softly, "What if everyone gets angry?" Grandfather squeezed his hand one last time. "Then understand, I have made you strong." A few moments later, the room fell completely silent. The grandson was alone. In his hand was the envelope. In his heart, fear and a promise. The next morning, he had to read that letter in front of everyone. But the question was, what was inside that envelope that grandfather had kept hidden until his final breath? What if a single letter could hold up a mirror to an entire village? What if no one had the courage to hear the truth? And what if your own people began to see you as an enemy? The next morning, the atmosphere was unusually serious. The grandson stood beside the grave. In his hand was the same yellow envelope, his heart pounding fast. He had not opened the envelope all night. Many times he felt tempted to see what was inside. But then he remembered his grandfather's promise. Read it in front of everyone. He took a deep breath and opened the envelope. On the paper was his grandfather's trembling handwriting. "My people of the village, I have spent my entire life among you. But there is a truth that we all know, and yet we continue to hide." The grandson's hands began to shake. He kept reading. "We speak ill of one another behind each other's backs. We remain silent even when we know the truth. We suppress the weak and bow before the powerful. This village will never progress until we cleanse our hearts." For a few moments, complete silence fell over the crowd. The grandson stood there, holding his breath. The last line of the letter read, "If you truly respect me, then from today onward, do not speak ill of anyone in their absence, and stop burying the truth." The grandson lowered the letter. The atmosphere had changed. He felt as though all eyes were fixed on him. No one said anything. But the anger was clear in the silence. Fear rose in the grandson's heart. "Did Grandpa put me in trouble?" he thought to himself. As he stepped back from the grave, he felt an unseen pressure on his shoulder. He turned around. No one was there. But there was a strange tension in the air. For the first time, the grandson realized this was not just a letter. It was a fire, one that was about to spread through the entire village. And he was standing alone, right in the middle of that fire. What if after speaking the truth, everyone turns their face away from you? What if you begin to think that maybe you were the one who was wrong? And what if keeping a promise becomes the greatest test of all? By evening, the atmosphere had completely changed. When the grandson returned home, the streets no longer felt the same. Doors were closed, eyes were hidden. He could clearly feel it. People were upset with him. He entered the room. Grandfather's bed was empty. The silence in the room felt heavier than before. He sat down on the floor. "Grandpa, what have you done?" His voice broke. Questions began to rise in his heart. Were they really all that bad? Or had Grandpa exaggerated things? Suddenly, his eyes fell on the corner of the bed. There was an old cloth bag placed there, one he had never seen before. His heart started beating faster. He stepped forward. He opened the bag. Inside was a small old diary. When he opened the first page, written at the top were the words, "If you are reading this, then understand that you have passed the first test." The grandson's eyes filled with tears. He kept reading. In the diary, Grandfather had written events from many years, how one lie had separated two families, how one rumor had taken away someone's honor, and how everyone knew the truth, yet no one had the courage to speak it. At the end, it was written, "My son, speaking the truth is never easy. At first, people become angry. Then, they begin to think. And then they change." The grandson's hands began to tremble. Suddenly, there was a loud knock on the door. He stood up in shock. The knock came again, this time harder. In his heart, fear and courage stood side by side. Was this a new test for him, or had the village already delivered its verdict? Slowly, he walked toward the door, and just as he placed his hand on the latch, the knocking suddenly stopped. Who was outside the door? And what was about to happen next? Does the truth always bring peace, or does it first take everything away? Can you stand alone when everyone is against you? And can a single promise change a person from within? There was no one outside the door, only an empty street and cold wind. The grandson's heart was still beating fast, but now, along with fear, anger had also begun to rise. He returned to the room. He held the diary tightly. "Grandpa, how long am I supposed to endure all this?" he said softly. He opened the next page of the diary. It read, "The one who speaks the truth is alone at first. People misunderstand him. But if he does not let go of gentleness, one day, those same people come closer to him." The grandson took a deep breath. He remembered. Grandfather used to say, "My son, even if your words are true, keep your tone gentle." Suddenly, he realized something. Grandfather had not just written about the village's faults, he had held up a mirror to everyone. And no one likes to look into a mirror. The grandson walked and stood in front of a mirror. He looked at himself. Did I also speak ill of others? The question struck his heart like an arrow. Yes, he had. He too had remained silent when he saw something wrong. Tears began to flow from his eyes. "Grandpa, you wanted to change me first, didn't you?" Now he was beginning to understand. This battle was less about the village and more about what was inside him. He sat down beside the bed. "I will not run away. I will not be angry. I will simply speak the truth," in a gentle tone. But at that very moment, he heard the sound of people outside. Whispers, low voices. It felt as though his name was being mentioned. Were people gathering against him, or was some other decision about to be made? The grandson walked toward the door. There was courage in his heart and fear as well. Perhaps today it would be decided whether the truth would win or he would be left alone. What if you grow tired, but the promise is still not fulfilled? What if you feel that everything is over, but the real test has only just begun? And what if the final step is the one that changes everything? The grandson reached the door. He slowly lifted the latch. No one was clearly visible outside, but the whispers were still there. He felt like closing the door, giving up everything, saying, "I never said anything." He slid down and sat against the wall. "Grandpa, I'm all alone." His voice carried exhaustion. He opened the diary again. On the last pages, it was written, "My son, do not blame people. Do not embarrass them. Just help them realize that we all make mistakes. Change does not come through accusation, it comes through example." The grandson kept staring at those words for a long time. Suddenly, he understood. Grandfather had never taken anyone's name. He had never called anyone bad. He had only spoken about habits. The grandson stood up. He opened the door fully. A few shadows stood at a distance outside, but he did not go to argue with anyone. Instead, he walked straight toward the graveyard. Standing beside his grandfather's grave, he said softly, "I will not call anyone wrong. I will change myself. And if anyone asks, I will speak gently." The next day, he took a new step. Where he once used to sit with friends and talk about others, today he remained silent. Someone said sarcastically, "What happened? Have you become a saint of truth now?" He smiled. "No, I'm just trying not to talk about someone in their absence." A few moments of silence followed. The whispers began to fade. Was something really changing? Or was it just temporary calm? The grandson felt. The real change was still yet to come. And perhaps tomorrow something would happen that would complete grandfather's wish. Can one person really change the thinking of an entire village? Can gentleness melt even the hardest hearts? And can a promise keep someone alive even after death? The next morning, the atmosphere felt different. As usual, the grandson went to the graveyard. Standing beside his grandfather's grave, he spoke quietly. "Grandpa, I'm trying, but I don't know if I'm succeeding." On his way back, he passed the same place where people often sat and talked. There were whispers again today, but as he walked by, silence fell for a moment. Before, that silence used to frighten him. Today, he simply smiled, greeted them, and walked on. 2 days, 3 days, he did not take part in speaking ill of anyone. He did not raise his voice in arguments. And whenever someone said something harsh about another person, he would gently say, "Maybe we should talk to them directly." Slowly, the whispers began to lessen. One day, at the same place where there had once been sarcasm, he heard a sentence. "That's true, it's easy to talk behind someone's back." The grandson stopped in his tracks. It was the very same sentence that grandfather had written in the diary. Tears filled his eyes. He went straight to the graveyard. Sitting beside the grave, he said, "Grandpa, you didn't change anyone. You changed me." And maybe that was enough. There was a light coolness in the air and peace in his heart. He had finally understood. Grandfather's last wish was not to shame the village. It was to show them a mirror. And a mirror only works when a person first looks at himself. The grandson stood up. Today, he was not alone. Inside him was strength. There was gentleness. And there was a lesson. Truth does not spread through loudness. It spreads through character. Grandfather was gone, but his final wish was now alive.